Hey guys, this is Mr. O'Shea. This is Bridge to Advanced Algebra, and this is going to be our first video lesson. The lesson is going to be on 3.3. It's the first half of 3.3, and it involves absolute value equations. So we're going to move slightly away from the inequalities just for today and focus on equations once more. All right, absolute value. What it actually means, it's going to essentially be the distance from 0. So if I said the absolute value of x, and those lines around x, those two bars, are the symbols for absolute value. So the absolute value of x represents the distance from x to 0 on a number line. So for example, if I said the absolute value of x is 4. Well, if we think of a number line in our heads, and there's 0, 4 spaces to the right could be the number 4, or 4 spaces to the left could be negative 4. So x could be 4, or it could be negative 4. Both of those two numbers are 4 spots away from 0 on a number line. All right, so if I want to solve absolute value equations like ax plus b equals c, I first need to isolate the absolute value term. So we want to get anything that's inside those absolute value bars all by itself. Secondly, you got to do two things to this. We need to solve two separate equations. The first equation that you're going to solve is going to be exactly kind of what you see. Ax plus b equals c. You just lose the absolute value bars. The second one that you have to remember to solve is ax plus b, but then you make whatever's on the right the opposite value. So if it was 10, you make it negative 10. Once you do both of those equations, you report both answers because both answers could be true. So let's take an example of it. We first have to get what's in the absolute value bars all by itself. So we want to get that 2x plus 1 all alone. So to do that, we'll add 2 to both sides. And we get the absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 7. So now I need two equations. I need 2x plus 1 equals 7. And I also need 2x plus 1 equals negative 7. So I'm going to solve that first one. I'll subtract 1 on both sides. I get 2x equals 6. If I divide each side by 2, we get x equals 3. So what that tells me is one of the answers to this problem is 3. Now I got to solve the other side. Subtract 1 again. Now I get 2x equals negative 8. And if I divide each side by 2, I get x equals negative 4. So in this specific problem, I had answers of 3 and negative 4. I'm going to write it in notation here. A set notation. Slightly different than what we do with the inequalities because it's just an equation. We're saying that the answers are 3 and negative 4. So we got another one here. 4 times the absolute value of 5x minus 2 equals 12. We first have to get rid of that 4. So we'll divide each side by 4. So then we're left with the absolute value of 5x minus 2 equals 3. Now, like we had said, we want this to be equal to 3 or negative 3. And the big issue is right in here. Anytime you take the absolute value of something, it always becomes positive. So if this inside was 3, well, the absolute value of 3 is 3, which is good. If the inside of this is negative 3, the absolute value of negative 3 would also be 3. That's why both answers could work on these problems. So we'll set it up. 5x minus 2 could equal 3. or 5x minus 2 could equal negative 3. You have to solve them both. I will add 2 to both sides here, and we get 5x equals 5. We divide each side by 5, and we get x equals 1. Same thing to the other side. We'll add 2. We get 5x equals negative 1. And if I divide each side by 5, I get x equals negative 1/5. Which means I've got 2 answers. Both will work equally fine. Answers are x equals 1 or negative 1/5. Let's do another example here. We've got the absolute value of x plus 4 equals negative 18. So I'm going to solve it out. X plus 4 equals negative 18, or x plus 4, and I change the other side into positive 18. And we'll test it. Right? Subtract 4, I get x equals negative 22, or subtract 4, I get x equals 14. However, there's a big problem here. These answers won't actually give me negative 18. We'll test them. Negative 22 plus 4, that's going to give me negative 18? I don't know. Negative 22 plus 4 is negative 18. However, if I take the absolute value of negative 18, I get a positive 18. And positive 18 does not equal negative 18. So that answer doesn't work. Now if I test this other side, plug 14 in, I get the absolute value of 14 plus 4. Does that equal negative 18? Absolute value 14 plus 4 is 18, but the absolute value of 18 is positive 18. And that again does not equal negative 18. So there's a big problem with this specific problem. And it has to do with that negative term. If after isolating the absolute value term, you're left with a negative, you have no solution. An absolute value can never equal a negative number. If I have the absolute value of x, it can never be a negative. Because the whole idea of an absolute value is that you're going to get a positive distance. So like in this problem, I go ahead and try to solve it. I'll divide each side by negative 2. And I get absolute value of x plus 5 equals negative 5. Problem is that any time that I try to do the absolute value of something, it's never going to equal a negative number. Because as soon as I plug it into there, if this side happened to be negative 5, if I take the absolute value, it turns positive 5, which is not our answer. If this side is positive 5, when I take the absolute value, it's still positive 5. Again, not our answer. So as soon as the absolute value equals a negative number, you guys know that there's no solution to the problem. Alright, so what I would like you guys to do now is pause the actual video, try the next 4 problems. When you're done with the 4 problems, unpause the video, check your answers with what we have posted. Alright, so you should have tried them. Let's go ahead and see if we were right. You guys should have added 7 to both sides. So we get 2 times the absolute value of x minus 5 equals 26. Divide each side by 2 to get that absolute value all by itself. You get absolute value of x minus 5 equals 13. So now we've got the absolute value. We have to set up 2 equations. You've got x minus 5 equals 13 and x minus 5 equals negative 13. Solve the first one by adding 5 on both sides. You get x equals 18. Solve the other one by adding 5. You get x equals negative 8. So your 2 answers for this problem were 18 and negative 8. Let's check number 2. Get rid of the 8, so you guys should have added 8 on both sides. You get 1/3 times the absolute value of 2x plus 4 equals 6. You treat those absolute value bars just like parentheses, by the way. Let's get rid of the 3, so we'll multiply each side by 3. And those 3's cancel. So I'm left with the absolute value of 2x plus 4 equals 18. Now that we got that all by itself, we have 2x plus 4 equals 18, and 2x plus 4, I'm going to write a little small here, equals negative 18. I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. I get 2x equals 14. Divide by 2, I get x equals 7. That's one of the answers. Same thing on the other side. Subtract 4, I get 2x equals negative 22. And then dividing by 2 would give me x equals negative 11. Alright, let's go ahead and write it in set notation here. Negative 11 and 7 are my two answers. Let's go on to example 3. Subtract the 11 on both sides. After I do that, I've got the absolute value of x minus 3 divided by 4 equals 4. If I multiply both sides by 4, I get the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 16. Now that I got the absolute value all alone, I have x minus 3 equals 16, and x minus 3 equals negative 16. Solve the one on the left, add 3 to both sides, you get x equals 19. Solve the one on the right, add 3 to both sides, you get x equals negative 13. Write your answers in set notation, negative 13, comma 19. Notice these last two were the only two that I actually probably did totally correctly. You want your numbers when you do set notation to be smallest to largest. I realize now that I wasn't doing that earlier, so please make sure you guys are doing that. And let's do the last problem here. We've got, for number 4, negative 3 times the absolute value of x minus 9 plus 6 equals 15. So I'll subtract 6. I get negative 3 times the absolute value of x minus 9 equals 9. I'm going to divide each side by negative 3, and I get the absolute value of x minus 9 equals negative 3. And right there, I know that that can never happen because it's a negative. So this one has no solution. Alright, I'll see you guys in class tomorrow. Please make sure these are all done, and you guys, if you have any questions, write them down and have them ready for class.